All right, you're welcome to another beautiful Saturday morning right here on the Afia Sports Show. I remain your priest of football, Emeka Madoka, aka Femelo, and obviously I'm not doing this by myself. I have him, KP, by my side. It's always a pleasure having you here. And we're having a new face today in town, and I'm talking about Sisi the right by. Well, welcome, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's get down to the nitty-gritty. It's almost international break, and a lot will be going down, but I want to start from the Super Eagles and all that. We have the sites that have been selected for this international journey, and that will be coming up on our screen shortly. But I want to ask you, Pastor C, before I get to you, KP, what are your thoughts on this squad that has been selected for the next AFCON qualifiers?
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me here. Truth be told, I think, and this has nothing to do with the Libyan debacle that happened, stranded in Libya and all. It's the Super Eagles of Nigeria under Coach Austin Eguavoen have just one opportunity now to seal that spot for the 2025 African Cup of Nations. And 1 point, just 1 point. And that's going to be against these two sides. That is against Benin Republic, and that's going to be away from home. And then Rwanda, the Rwandan players. So this squad is really what you expect him to bring out there. Everybody has passed that trauma. Every player that was involved in that trip to Libya that went through all that, they've gone through the trauma. So the 23-man squad that's been brought out there is expected. Everybody is fit, everybody is ready, everybody is strong enough to go ahead and do the job. So you're looking at the squad that includes, of course, the first choice goalkeeper, talking about Stanley Nwabali.
Yes.
And Stanley Nwabali is going to have to stay between the sticks there. But I like the fact that this man, Amas, the former Bendel Insurance, player has been there. He's already been called up there. So it's really good to know that there are a good number of players that are available who will be ready for the job. But one surprise inclusion has to be Gabriel Osho. Just to mention what a few there. Gabriel Osho has been there. The former Luton Town defender, he's been called up there. But looking at the squad, I think it's safe to say that apart from the few absentees that we have there, the squad is a good enough squad, strong enough. Maduka Okoye, I would love to see Maduka Okoye start, but he can't because you have to stick with what you have. You have to stick with what's been working. So that goalkeeping position there, which comes from Stanley Nwabali, he's put in a lot of good shifts. Maduka Okoye has been doing a good job in Udinese, but clearly you have to stick with what's working. If it's not broken, don't fix it. I mean, that's just what works there. But the defense, I'm satisfied with the defense. William Trustekong is there. Bright Osai Samuel is there. Everybody's involved. So I think it's a good thing. I don't know, you want to say something about it?
I want to throw this to KP, and you've seen the squad that has been put out there.
Yeah.
You've seen a little bit of tweakings here and there, and was this expected from you, or do you feel like it was just a last-minute development when choosing the side?
When you have a large pool of players to pick from, there can always be little changes that don't affect the core of the team. I feel the Nigerian national team now has a core, a very strong core. You can see the goalkeeper, Stanley Nwabali. As Mr. Sisi said, I would also love to see Maduka Okoye get a chance. If we are able to seal the deal in our first game, I feel he can get an opportunity in the next game against Rwanda. It's my opinion, to just see what he can do, because he has been in good form for Udinese. But speaking on that core, I would say having Calvin Bassey, William Trustekong, Alex Iwobi, Ndidi, and a player that we don't talk about a lot, but that has been doing very well, Bashir. Yes, he has gotten limited minutes for his club side, but he has been able to prove that he's a decent player, he's a good player, always turns up for the Super Eagles.
Let's not forget Onyeka, who is coming back.
Yeah, exactly. And then the man on form, Victor Osimhen there. I think we could just wrap up the deal.
He's the only man on form. I mean, Super Eagles have a lot of
player of the year, right? The CAF player of the year.
You've got Adam Lukman on the side. We've got Victor Boniface also there, and bringing back Umar Sadiq.
But there's been a lot of talk about Victor Boniface, about him not performing for the Super Eagles. But I feel that chit-chat has been unfair to him. My reason being that when it comes to the national team, it's not that easy to show what you can do. Reason, you may have limited opportunity. He's obviously not the first choice striker. So you may see him getting 30 minutes here, 20 minutes there. Some games where he started where Victor Osimhen was injured, people will say he has not shown us that killer instinct he shows for his club. But I just believe with time, we'll be able to see the wonderful player that he is. Because we may need to consider one way to go is playing both Victor Boniface and Victor Osimhen together as a partnership.
If I may throw in something there, I think it's a case of a task for every tool and a tool for every task, because Victor Osimhen is a different kind of striker. We know what kind of power forward he is. We know that he gets involved in the physical side of it, the build-up play. He's a classic centre forward.
A final third kind of striker.
But he's a final third kind of striker and more.
Yeah.
He's somebody who's going to be a nuisance in that 18-yard box. I mean, we've seen what he's doing in Galatasaray. It's not just about the goals, it's about the assists, it's about the troubling of the defenders, stretching them. The work rate is something that's top-notch, second to none. And I'll be very honest, I'm not casting shades or aspersions on the other Victor, that's Victor Boniface. Bomber boy, that's what we call him. But truth be told, when you talk about the work ethic, and then the defensive contribution, Victor Boniface still has a lot to learn in that regard. So there are different kinds of players that are involved there. Victor Osimhen, clearly, a fit Victor Osimhen will be the first choice. But you're looking at the other players there. Victor Boniface, I'm sorry to say this, he's not done enough to justify his starting a crucial game. But just like you said, 1 point is all that Nigeria needs. 1 point. So you can afford, I mean, Cerezo, Austin Aguavon can afford to tinker a little bit and try to get something there. All he needs is 1 point. And there are 6 points for grabs in the game. So I think it's just, he's not going to play for a point. That's certain. Yeah. He's not going to play for a point. But I think that he's going to put his strongest side. And then against Rwanda, we're playing at home. So I feel that it's going to be a very, very good campaign.
Well, I personally feel like he would want to do the job against Benin and get all 3 points. Maybe he would twinkle a bit, maybe against Rwanda, since if he gets the 3 points against Benin, he could just put a flexible side, get maybe a few players who haven't gotten some minutes to just get a feel of the ball. I feel that's what Aguavon will be going for in the Rwanda team, against Rwanda rather. But I don't want to dwell too much on this Super Eagles side. The international journey will be beginning across Europe and other places. But I want to go straight to the MPFL and one side in particular, Bayelsa United. The government has threatened that they would ban them if they get relegated this season. I want to ask, before I get to you, Mr. Sisi, I want to ask this as a general question. Is it fair for the government to actually place a ban on them just for getting relegated? I want to throw that as an open question. You can take the floor. You can.
Okay. Go ahead. I have a lot to say about this.
So it shows. First thing I would say is this is the challenge with what we call state-owned teams. We don't see much of this in Europe. Many teams can be fan-owned or privately owned. Now, but when there's a state-owned team, a lot of factors get into play. And especially when, not throwing any aspersions on the government or anything, when the government is not a stable government or a working government. So it's very disappointing to see those type of threats flying around, closing down the team, and because it may be a budget kind of thing. They don't want to sponsor whatever the team is doing because they may not get the money back from doing whatever they have to do. But I see it as a very disappointing statement from the Bayelsa State government, and one we should run away from when it comes to Nigerian football. That's why many people are encouraged to see a lot of teams that are owned by private individuals, like Sporting Lagos, coming up. When you see those type of teams, we want them to do better and not just get relegated every single time.
So, Mr. Sisi, you can take the floor. I want to ask this. They've threatened to ban them, and that means the onus is on the club to do what it needs to get itself higher in the table, even if it's not to win the competition, but at least get themselves to a reasonable place in the table. I want to ask, is it unfair, or is it sort of the government trying to motivate the team to do better?
Well, if you motivate someone with torture, I don't know what you call that. Even though it's not torture, I mean, I'm just stretching it a little bit. But I seem to have this somewhat divergent view to this. And I think the sooner it's tackled, the better. This issue of government's interference in sports, in football in particular, is a very tricky one. And it will continue happening because everywhere you hear this statement, he that pays the piper dictates the tune. Exactly. For crying out loud, you're looking at Bayelsa United, and of course, every team in the MPFL, with notable exception, Remo Stars. And then formerly, we used to have some teams that were in the MPFL years back. You talk about, of course, you could do Sporting Lagos is actually privately owned, but you're looking at teams that were there before. Giwa FC, I mean, we know how far that has gone.
Yeah.
We talk about Ifeanyi FC, which was formerly Gabros FC, and we've seen how far that has gone. But that means the vast majority of teams in the MPFL are state-owned, and you see there is a mindset that is used to run them. First of all, you're looking at the case of a state. The state government established the team in question. The state government funds the team, sponsors the team. State government gives the team incentives, and you want to stop the state government from having interference there, from having a say. Because if you're a businessman and then you have I want you to understand, I'm not holding brief for the state.
Yeah.
Not at all. I would not like to see Barca United go down and then get disbanded, because that's a threat that you have to take serious. But what I'm saying in essence is this: you're motivating them to do what they need to do. Do they need that kind of motivation in the form of threats? Not necessarily. They need to do their job. They are professionals. They've been languishing. Last season, they narrowly escaped relegation. And then it's starting again. I know that it's still too early. It's still too early. This is a game which I think that should be match week 11 that we're stepping into right now. So they still have a lot to do, because a typical league format is not a sprint, but a marathon. So there's a lot of work to do, but there has to be some checks and balances. You have to find out that maybe private investors and other people need to have a stake in the clubs in question. So if the state is the only one that owns the club, that calls the shots, that set up the board of trustees and do everything, then if they make such threats, you have to understand why they're making such threats. They are losing money. They are losing revenue there. So they have to make sure that the team is well motivated, and I just have to understand where they're coming from.
Okay, but just a little counter to that. Yes. I understand that you get where they're coming from,
yes,
but my own point of view is, I think the other way is to go by it.
I totally agree.
Now, this is where management comes in, because if that is said, okay, you guys are not giving a return on investment, the club is languishing in the bottom half of the table every single year. We have seen this in time past with some clubs. If, for example, say a club in England, Chelsea, for example, you don't make the UCL, there may be salary deductions. Maybe everybody's salary flat out reduces by 25%. That's a cut. That's like a budget cut. You're cutting expenditure. I feel that have been a better way to go around it than banning the team from participating again, or closing down or shutting down the team.
First of all, it's a threat to ban. We're getting back to what he said. No, it's all about motivation. You motivate because, truth be told, a person can only run as fast as either of two things: what he's pursuing or what's pursuing him. Right now, the threat of disbandment is what's pursuing them, so they might just need to step up and then up the ante.
Well, I mean, it's always something to see when state-owned teams, this government tries to close down some of these state-owned teams, and I mean, threats shouldn't really be issued out. Like, I think there should be other ways, like KP said, maybe a salary deduction could be better. I mean, that will motivate these professionals to actually sit up, because nobody wants their wages cut.
Or just invest more, because that's the other side, that's the other angle to the argument. Invest more.
Personally, I feel a cry for private investment. I think to see the clubs do better.
Well, I mean, we do have the MPFL coming up this weekend, and the fixtures will be coming up on our screen shortly, but I want to identify the key fixture for me, and that's Remo Stars versus Eimba. That fixture is coming tomorrow. And I mean, well, it speaks for itself. It's a big game there. I mean, these are two of the teams that finished in top 3 last season, and our dear Rangers would be playing against Plateau United this come tomorrow. Well, let's start with today's games. We have Bender Insurance versus Kano Pillars. We have Lobby Stars versus Abia Warriors today by 4 p.m. Tomorrow, Nassau United take on Kara United by 4 p.m. All games will be going simultaneously at the same time. Plateau United, Rangers, Heartland Sunshine Stars, Eimba Remo Stars, Rivers United, Bayelsa United, Castina United versus Ikorodu City, Niger Tornadoes, Oka United, and El Kanemi would be playing away from home from 3SG. So I want to ask, what are your thoughts on this Remo Stars versus Eimba game, KP? It promises to be a big one there.
It's always a big one when these two sides meet. Sides that are expected to participate in the CAF Confederations Cup. My own theory is, there's this saying in Nigerian football, it's always very difficult for their away team. So even though there have been some shock results of late, there have been some.
So you do predict a win for Enyimba?
Yes, I predict a win for Enyimba. I think it's going to be straightforward. Wow. You're going to disagree.
I'll beg to differ.
Okay.
Really, when you check Daniel Ogunbodede and his crew, and I mean, this is somebody who is very, very tactical.
Yeah.
If you check, Remo Stars were the only consistent team last season. Now, from match week 1 down to match week 38, they were just thereabouts within the title race. They were there.
They were always there.
Always in the top 3, top 4. And they were there consistently to the end of the season. And it's not just the first time. They've been building. They've been going in leaps and bounds. And this is a very, very solid team. We saw what happened with, even their feeder team. Well, sorry to call them feeder team, but I mean, that's what they are. Beyond Limits, who had to give their slots to Heartland FC. But it just tells you how bright the future for Remo Stars is.
Proper run club.
Any very properly run club. And it's a typical model for every private club, private-owned club in the MPFL. And really, when you check that consistency, Enyimba are a good side, and they've shown continuity. I have to commend them. I have to commend the leadership of the chairman himself, Papilo, that's Wanko Kano. I also have to commend the efforts of the former manager himself, that is Finidi George, who is now in Rivers United, and then his successor, who learns very, very well, referring to Yemi Olarinwaju. So really, when you check what they've been doing, they have been solid. That's why they're third on the spot, on the log. And this is a team, this season, this MPFL season, is extremely competitive. I love what I'm seeing with the referees, the refereeing decisions. I love what I'm seeing with the consistency of calls. I love what I'm seeing with the lack of violence and the lack of incident. And that just shows you that that's the trend that you have to follow. So when you're seeing a team like this, yes, I understand where you're coming from. Enyimba have a chance, and I agree. They have a chance going to Remo Stars, to Ikene to play against Remo Stars and get something. A draw or even a 3 points. But Remo Stars won't roll over and play dead. They have a point to prove. They went all the way. They went all the way and pushed the Flying Antelopes, that's Enugu Rangers, to the title. And then we saw what they did. And then they've been strengthened. They've been motivated. And now I think it's going to be too much of an ask for Enyimba to get something very, very solid from this game.
Wow. Well, I always like
That's
to
pretty damning.
Not really. I'm just being realist.
I want to get this straight. KP, you do see the home side taking this one.
Yeah.
And if I'm correct, Mr. C, you do see the away side maybe pulling off a shock.
Yeah.
Because we are talking about.
I don't think he will see it as a shock. That's
not necessarily a shock. Well, maybe a surprise, a pleasant surprise to those who are banking on what will happen in Aba. But it's not going to be a shock because every team has been consistent. We've seen, well, not every team anyway, sorry.
It is a big clash at the top of the table.
Yes. It's a title clash.
But I want to ask, there's this tale that always goes on the MPFL.
Yes.
That every season after you win the MPFL, you have a dip in form, you have some problems the next season. And quite clearly, this season, Rangers haven't been red hot from the start like they were last season. Do you think there's been a little drop from the quality of the coaching staff, or the players themselves haven't put in enough to merit the top spot? Because as we see on the table, the Remo Stars do sit in first, Rivers United second, Enyimba third. So that's third versus second. First, in the big game. Rangers currently sit in fifth, just behind El Kanemi. I mean, there's a little bit of dip in form here. And I'll ask Mr. Sisi, what can Mr. Amobi and his men do to turn this season around for themselves and probably retain that title?
Now, I know it's still too early. Just like I said earlier, a league season is a sprint. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And what you focus on in the marathon is stamina, more of stamina than speed. Enugu Rangers did very well last season, winning the league title for the 8th time, the MPFL. But truth be told, there's been a lot of wheeling and dealing. Many players left. Of course, Rangers were missing their top 9, their best centre forward in the league, their most experienced centre forward in the league. They've just gotten some respite by his return. I'm referring to Gordon Obaje. So Gordon Obaje has come back. Many of those who have been expected to bang in the goals have not done that. I think that game that happened in the Cathedral just a couple of weeks ago or so against Kano Pillars, same as Sugida, is a typical example of the Rangers season so far. and where they went wrong. First of all, you're looking at the gap between, I would call it the communication gap, but it's a gap nonetheless, between Fidelis Ilechukwu, the building one, and then his coaching staff.
Yeah.
Probably there was a communication breakdown there. Then also the players that have moved on, that have departed from Enugu Rangers. So it's something that they need to look at and build. I know that they are very good. They have a technical, very, very good technical crew. But that bridge, how do you explain the fact that they were leading 4-0 by halftime, 4-0,
Yeah.
and then it took the coach to learn to get there and then change one or two things there.
That's the
And
question.
then Isaac Xavier coming up to do the
That's
job.
the question I actually wanted to ask you, because we have seen a lot of participation from Mr. Fidelis Ilechukwu
Yes.
in the national team. And a counter argument is that, okay, Remo Stars are top, and his counterpart, Mr. Daniel, has also been participating in the national team. But do you see it as a challenge for Enugu Rangers? Is that part of the reason they have not been performing at their best, that the coach has not always been fully present here? He has two duties to commit to, being the head coach of Enugu Rangers and the assistant coach of the Super Eagles.
So back to the counter argument you raised. Remo Stars, because you have to raise it. I call it a spade, not a garden implement. So the matter is this. It is that gap. There seems to be, I could be wrong, that's not corrected, but there seems to be a gap between Fidelis Ilechukwu and then his coaching staff. Because I'm not trying to demean them or anything, but probably something went wrong that day. Something must have happened. They seem to be somewhat clueless. They seem to be out of their depth at the time. It was a bad day in the office for them. I have to just hold brief for them. But what happened was that it took the gaffer himself to come there and then salvage something. Yes, no points were gotten, but it was very, very close. 3 goals scored. Isaac Xavier was scoring 2 belters from outside the 18-yard box. Now, that's because there was a tactical tweak. Changes happened there. Now, those changes would have been avoided if the coaching staff had done their job. You won't see that same thing happening in Remo Stars. So that's what I'm saying. It's not the national team engagement that's the issue. For me, it could be an issue, but it's not the issue.
Okay, so now what do you say? Now for the club, Rangers, Mr. Amobi now sitting over as the CEO. What does he do in a situation like this? Does he limit the participation of his head coach in the national team, seeing that it may be affecting their performance in the league? Because he has to care about his team. Yes, Nigeria is our country, but he has to care about the team that he owns.
You're tempting me to go to the counter argument. I won't bite. I'll stay away from it. Now, of course, though, Barrister Amobi Ezeaku is, he's, first of all, this is somebody who's well invested in Enugu Rangers, in the project of the Flying Antelopes. He's done a fantastic job. Somebody who has a passion for the club. He's not just a career politician. He's somebody who, I mean, for crying out loud, a goalkeeper who was a registered player there himself. He's been involved in Rangers. He breathes Rangers. He lives Rangers. So really, the truth of the matter is that he's going to have to look out for the interest of Enugu Rangers first of all. So probably there'll have to be a dialogue. There'll have to be a dialogue between himself and the NFF. He has to discuss with Cerezo, that is Austin Guavara, to find out if there's a way
they can strike a balance,
so that the Super Eagles will not lose out. And the Rangers at the same time will lose out either.
Okay. Last thing I would like to ask, and last thing I'll say on this matter, because I've been thinking about it over and over again. I think there's a bigger issue here. And the issue is the calendar. Now, I don't think it's an encouraging thing for the national team to be playing the same time the league is going on. There's no pause in the league. So that's almost like saying we don't expect many of players from the league to be called up to the national team. That is the statement that comes out from that. And I feel the bigger conversation we should have here is, do we need to actually pause the league season when there's an international break? The local league, because that's the only way these things, like the question we're having now, that's the best way to checkmate it. And also encourage the players to say, okay, you guys are going to have a chance. Some of you may be called up, people playing in local leagues. You don't have to leave your club side to come and play in the national team when games are going on. That's the approach that has been adopted in most top leagues in Europe. And I'm thinking it's something we should look into as a Nigerian society.
I do agree with KP there. I mean, we have to put a pause to the league so that some of these players could get an opportunity to get a call up to the national team. Because as the league is going on while we are playing international, you have just basically told the players...
Only players in Europe are going to play.
It's only players in Europe that we're going to be calling back. And that doesn't seem right. Because most of these managers abroad, they pick from their local leagues. So why can't we adopt the same system over here in Nigeria?
We can adopt the same system, but we need to check all the variables involved.
Yeah.
It's just recently, I think this season, last season or so, that we've seen a semblance of stability in the league. And I'm referring to the stability with respect to the fixture dates. Fixtures being released, starting like this season. I stand corrected, but I think this season that just began is the first season that we've had a date for the resumption of the league penned down, and we stuck to that date.
Yeah.
Because there's been some sort of inconsistency in the dates in recent seasons. So when you talk about that stability, I think it's step by step. I always say this: Rome was not built in a day, but it was built daily. So while we're exploring that option of having a break in the league, we have to have a standard for the league to be, this is when the league is meant to start. This is when we might have a window of opportunity. Nothing is going to come in to shift it. Even internal issues like elections and stuff like that happen, because these are matters that come up, with the sole exception of maybe insecurity or maybe natural disasters and things like that, like we saw in the Spanish La Liga in the Valencia region, because of that flood that happened there. They had to pause some games in that region that involved Valencia, Villarreal, and all the clubs that are there. Now, that's an exception, not the rule. The league season is sacrosanct. It moves on unless there's a clash between a league fixture and there may be a continental fixture or so. So they'll just have to move that. But that's the exception, not the rule. So I think exploring that is a good thing, but you have to check all the variables. And then also the argument is going to be made about the fact that, and I'm sorry to say this, but it's the reality that we see, the issue of tokenism. Tokenism is being employed when it comes to call-ups from the local leagues. Because you're calling up somebody to warm a bench, he's not going to be used, he's rarely going to be used. Ojo Olorunleke, for instance, I'm sure he has wonderful memories from the bench, when he was with Aimba. And then you're looking at, of course, Stephen Ikenna. Was it Stephen Ikenna? I'm trying to remember the Rangers player that was called up. So really, that's a conversation that will still continue, but we have to check all the variables and then be sure that it will work for both Enugu Rangers and, of course, at large, all the teams in the MPFL and the national side.
Well,
thank you.
There's a lot to talk about Nigeria and the MPFL, and about we do have to cross over to the other side, and I'm talking about Europe now. We have the Premier League back, and yes, the biggest fixture of the weekend is Chelsea versus Arsenal. No discredit to any other match out there, but I mean, that's the biggest fixture of the weekend. And that's coming from the Stamford Bridge tomorrow. And before we get to tomorrow's fixtures, let's just brief through the fixtures that starts on today. And we have Brentford, Bournemouth, we've got Crystal Palace, Fulham, we've got West Ham, Everton, Wolves, Southampton, Brighton City, Liverpool, Aston Villa, Manchester United, Leicester, Nottingham Forest, Newcastle, Spurs, Ipswich, Chelsea, Arsenal. Like, I've identified Chelsea, Arsenal to be my big fixture. Do you agree with me as that being the biggest fixture of the week?
Biggest fixture of the week is clearly Man United, Leicester.
I'll pretend I didn't hear it.
just say that.
But I do also look at Liverpool Villa as another big game.
Yeah, that's a huge game.
That's another huge game coming up this weekend.
It is a big fixture, and I think let's rub some salt into Arsenal fans a bit. It's a fixture between two former European champions. So I think it's safe to say that it's a big fixture.
I mean, currently the top half of the table, Arsenal are the only side without a Champions League in the top half of the table. We have City with 1 Champions League. We've got Liverpool with 6, Chelsea with 2, Nottingham Forest with 2, Villa with 1. I mean, that's how it is at the top of the table right now. The top 6, it's only Arsenal without a European Championship there. But that aside, I do want to ask, Liverpool have been red hot this season. Before we get to the main fixture that we've identified, Liverpool have been red hot. They are sitting on top of both the Premier League and the Champions League at the moment. I do want to ask, what is Arne Slot getting right at the moment?
With Arne Slot, much plaudits to him because it's an interesting one. Some people may say he inherited a good squad. A lot of people have inherited good squad and not maintained this momentum. What I'll say about Arne Slot is, in the spirit of US elections and American politics, I'll just call him a conservative. That's what he's getting right. Arne Slot is not like club that's going to say, oh, we're going to go gang press from minute 1 to minute 90. We're not going to stop chasing the ball And he's not also going to say, oh, we're going to just, get pending in our own box, defend. And he is a mixture between possession football, a counter style. His in-game management is wonderful because you can see in their last game against Brighton, he started the game with a 4-3-3. As the game was getting difficult, Brighton took the lead. You could see him change the shape to 4-4-2, or you can call it 4-2-2-2. Like, you could see this flexibility within his play to say, okay, we're going to do anything it takes within the game to get the 3 points. And it's just so lovely to see because he has not made many signings, but Liverpool is just a team that you could look up to and say, they look like champions. The reason they look like champions is not because they're blowing teams away. They look like champions because they're getting the job done. The defense is solid, the midfield is decent, and the striking department is wonderful.
I want to throw this question to Mr. C here. And Man City are expected to always win the league because of Guardiola's input on the Premier League for the past few years. But this season, it seems like due to injuries, they've had a dip in form. And is it no Rodri, no Partey? That's what they are saying right now. The Rodri injury seems to be crucial to that midfield. De Bruyne just coming back, but still couldn't help them in the Sporting game. So the damage had been done already before he came in. I want to ask, is it what we expect from Pep? Just take the season like a Jessica from the beginning, then towards the end of the back end, snap and that's it, we win the league? Okay. Is that the tactics you see Pep Guardiola adopting? Or?
Well, I think this is the biggest test. This should be the biggest test of Pep's managerial career. Because if he's going to somehow pull off a miracle here, it's going to be the most remarkable thing. Because my mentor in broadcasting would always say this, God rest his soul, he would always say this, that the agility of a monkey is determined by the availability of the branches. And once you have the right branches, you leverage on your agility as a simian, as a monkey and all that. I'm not calling Pep a monkey, don't get me wrong. But the point is, this is one of the most brilliant managers in world football, and he has been blessed with some of the best squads over the years, right from Barcelona down to Bayern Munich, and then now with Manchester City. But there are some key members of that squad, of the squad that he's had, that are almost irreplaceable. Yeah, like you said, no Rodri, no Partey. Truth be told, Kovacic is a very, very good player. John Stones has shown his versatility, moving into that central midfield position there. You're looking at someone like Rico Lewis, who is also shown his versatility, but he's still a young player, still a lot to learn. But a Rodri, you cannot replace. When you check the percentage of wins that Manchester City have had, or
with him and without him.
With and without him, it just the statistics are very, very damning. They're very glaring there for all to see. So having a Rodri out for the rest of the season is a massive blow, and it showed against Ruben Amorim's Sporting Lisbon. More on him later, but the reality on ground is that it showed. Without Rodri, you're going to struggle. Without Rodri, you're not going to have that shield for the defense. Without Rodri, you're not going to have those progressive carries and all that. And it's going to be a massive one for Manchester City moving ahead if they are not able to get the job done without Rodri, because they are struggling right now. And let's tell ourselves the truth. This fixture today, they are playing against a Brighton and Hove Albion, who under Fabian Husler are a different kind of beast. We were talking about what Graham Potter did when he was in Brighton and Hove Albion. We then talked about what Roberto De Zerbi did when he took over before leaving. But now we're seeing this young man, like he's a young man, 31 years of age.
Youngest manager
in the Premier League. He has something to prove. And if I know anything about young managers always want to put their best foot forward and then impose themselves. Once they can get their players to buy into the vision, then they'll do their job very, very well. And then get over the finish line. And they see this as a massive test. They smell blood, figuratively speaking. They smell blood. They're looking at a Man City that's vulnerable, that have lost 3 consecutive games. It's not been done in recent seasons. 3 consecutive games
in all competitions.
In all competitions.
You're talking about losing to Tottenham in the Carabao Cup. You're talking about losing to Sporting Lisbon. You're talking about losing in the
AFC Bournemouth.
It's back-to-back defeats for Pep in all competitions now, and Brighton would be wanting to pounce on that opportunity. But that aside, I do want to go back to the London derby. Arsenal-Chelsea is still in the running for the Premier League title, because as it is, the top 5 is wide open. It's just about a few points separating first to 5th. I mean, Liverpool obviously leading the line with 25 points. You have Man City with 23. You've got Nottingham Forest with 19, Chelsea 18, Arsenal 18, Villa 18. It's tightly contested between the actually 3rd to 5th place. But I want to ask, do you see any of these teams, I'm talking about Arsenal, Chelsea, Villa, do you see them breaking into the top 2 at any point? I'm throwing the question out to everyone.
Okay, with the league table, one thing I always say is I don't judge it too early. I wait for the first 10 games of the season, which we have seen already, and that will give you a clear indication of how things may end up by the end of the season, because we've already gone 1/3 of the season. Now, Aston Villa have a very good squad, but they are facing some inconsistencies. Unai Emery, I have to give him plaudits for the work he has done in Aston Villa so far, taking them from relegation fighters to Champions League contenders now. But I feel they don't have the squad to do it, because a lot of their players prove to be inconsistent. 1 or 2 injuries can disrupt the whole balance of the team. So I may not see them there. But if Arsenal, with the return of Odegaard, if Arsenal can just find a bit of form, I see them returning and breaking back into the top 2. Recently, we have seen them, they have gone for a more defensive approach this season. It may be PTSD that Arteta has faced over the last 2 seasons, missing out narrowly. And then he has gone to a Mourinho-esque style, trying to be more cautious than, going for the lead most times. Or we may just say he did that because his talisman was not on the pitch, his creative masterpiece in Martin Odegaard. But we'll see now with the return of Odegaard, if Arsenal can just string along a bit of form, then we'll have a clearer picture of where we might expect Arsenal to end up this season. Because you must remember, Arteta is under a lot of pressure. Now, this is Arteta's 5th or 6th year at the club. He has won a trophy, good for him, in his first season. He won the FA Cup. But now, this is Arteta's team. The club has invested. In time past, we did not see Arsenal spending a lot of money in the team and buying players. But now, Arsenal have done this, and now they'll be expecting, hey, bro,
it's time to pay back what we've invested.
We have to see rewards for what we have invested. And I think I won't say he's under a lot of pressure, but there's some pressure on him now to deliver and bring some silverware to the club.
Mr. C, I do want to ask this question here. And I want to tweak it from I want to make sure you have some Arsenal affiliations. Okay. I want to just throw in some banter to your side. I'll ask you, Enzo Maresca, since he came and took over this team, what are your thoughts on his tactics going on so far? I mean, it seems like he has a defined plan. Once or twice it hasn't worked out, but I mean, he looks solid enough to take you to at least the top 4 this season. Do you see them pushing beyond being in the top 4? See them actually eventually contending for the title?
It's interesting that you raised this issue. I had this discussion, we talked about that on air. I was referring to this, and I was consistent. I have always been consistent in this discussion, even before Enzo Maresca came into the picture, that Chelsea are, and this was like, I think shortly after the whole takeover, the Clearly consultancy from Dr. Bowie and everybody taking over Chelsea. I said that this Chelsea side, with all the signings that they are making at the time, are building a killer squad. But you know how it is when you have a very solid group around. You have good ingredients, but the wrong cook. So they've had the wrong cook sometimes. They've not really done that. No disrespect to Mauricio Pochettino, the last manager. He did the best he could, but he wasn't supported the way he should have been supported. I think Chelsea did a very good job by getting Enzo Maresca. He has, like you said, a clearly defined plan right now. What he did in Leicester City is simply being replicated on a larger scale in Chelsea. And like a typical Pep Guardiola disciple, because that's another funny thing, it's a clash between the Pep Guardiola disciples. So as a typical Pep Guardiola disciple, he goes in there, wants to imprint his identity on the team, and then find those who are surplus to requirement and then sideline them. We saw what happened with Raheem Sterling. We saw the issues that he was having, with Chalobah at the first time. And then the fact that he's been able to do with or without Reece James, because Reece James, somebody called Reece James, I'll be right back. And that's really very, very sad because of his injury, sketchy injury issues. But the reality on ground is that he's doing something very good. That game against Man City aside, the first game of the season, which was typical, you don't expect a Chelsea at that stage to beat Man City. It wasn't done. It's not done. So they got that way. But they were very solid on the road. They were very solid getting the results. They've not had too much joy at home at Stamford Bridge because let's face the fact, Chelsea, if you check the form table at home, Chelsea are 11th at home, getting 2 wins from their 5 home games so far this season. But that's something they'll need to fix. Everybody has suffered injuries. They've had their own injury issues. Cole Palmer is a doubt, but I think he's back in training.
Yeah,
They're trying to see how they can risk him in the game. You have players that are out, players that have been inconsistent, players that have not really shown they justify the price tag. Forget about the goal that Moises Caicedo scored not long ago. Moises Caicedo has really not lived up to the billing. It's good to see Enzo Fernandez coming back into.
So I would like to cut in there because I beg to differ. The numbers have shown quite the opposite for aerial duels and defensive win recoveries in the midfield.
Yeah.
For a DM, he's actually had the highest recovery rate of all the DMs across the league.
Yeah.
That shows that amongst the Declan Rice, the whole Odegaard's. So I say Odegaard, I mean the Freds and everyone of the league.
The Rodriguez.
He has actually had most win percentages.
Well, he has 117,000. He has 115,000 million reasons why he should be there, but he's not been there consistently.
That's nice one there. But what I have to say about Moises Caicedo is this. Last season was a very poor season from him. With the price tag, with the expectations, what he did at Brighton, I feel what failed him was the system at Chelsea. They didn't have a good system for him because, you see, the coach, as Mr. C has said, Mauricio Pochettino did a very good work, but it was not good enough. So the system was not there. But with Enzo Maresca, what I like about Chelsea now is that there's a clear system. So everybody knows their responsibility, everybody knows their job. So we have seen an improved Moises Caicedo. He's doing way better than he did last season. Now, the person I may say that is not living up to the billing has given us 120 million reasons why he is not doing that. It's Enzo Fernandez. Because you can see, at the beginning of the season, Enzo Maresca tried his best to fit him in, but he has not repaid that fit that has been shown by the manager, and he's now finding it difficult to get back into the team. So that's one that Chelsea may have to look out for. They may have to put him in the transfer market for sale or something like that. I just want
to end this Premier League conversation here with, what are your thoughts on the Chelsea game? Any predictions for you?
For me, remember I said the home form, Arsenal are 5th on the home, in home form, Chelsea are 11th, and that's really something. And coupled with the fact that, I think this is a fun fact, Mikel Arteta has never, as a manager, lost at Stamford Bridge. Now that's something that will be playing in his head, and it's going to be playing in the Chelsea players' heads. In fact, he's lost only 2 games, competitive games, to Chelsea. And that's, that his first season, and that was at the Emirates. And of course, that's 2020-2021 season. They lost at the Emirates 2-0 when Lukaku was still a player. So that just tells you how long ago it was.
I mean, but there is a first time for everything.
No, I agree with you. But what I'm saying is this, just like KP mentioned, he talked about the return of Odegaard. That's a massive boost. The return of one of your star players is a massive boost. The brilliance of players, and then the fact that they have a point to prove. They lost their last away game, a very, very tricky game to the Northeast against Newcastle United in the Premier League. Now they're in London.
That wasn't the Carabao Cup, actually. They lost.
No, I'm referring to Arsenal. Arsenal. So they will not want to repeat that. And Arsenal have been pretty good in London. Now, there are 2 things playing for Arsenal right now. First of all, Arsenal have been like the kings of London. Some will call them the pride of London and call Chelsea the pride of London. But I don't know. No, I mean, I'm not, and this has nothing to do with, and by the way, I'm an Arteta fan, so let's leave that aside. What I'm saying in essence is this, 2 factors are working in the favor of Arsenal in this. Arsenal have been very brilliant in London derbies in the last couple of seasons. Then secondly, Arsenal have been very brilliant in top 6 clashes. They've not lost a top 6 clash since last season. So coming up against that traditional top 6. So coming up against the Chelsea side, they'll be upbeat, they'll be motivated. It's the motivation I'm talking about right now. They'll be motivated to go there and then get the job done. So I think what I could say, it's not a straightforward prediction, but what I can say is that Arsenal will not lose at Stamford Bridge. That much I can say.
So you give it a win or draw?
A win or draw to the Gunners, yes.
I'll actually side with him. I know Arsenal are definitely not losing.
Well, I beg to differ. I don't see a 1-0 in favor of Chelsea
No
or a
surprise
draw.
there.
Chelsea are not capable of a 1-0. They don't even keep
Like
clean
I
sheets at
said,
home.
there is a first time for everything.
Okay.
Let's keep
I
our
mean,
fingers crossed.
this is a season they've written off Chelsea, and Chelsea have been shutting up. the
We'll be here on
haters.
Saturday.
I'm not. I'm not writing off Chelsea. I've never written off Chelsea, especially like what I said. Chelsea they're building a killer squad. They will make the top 4. I'm sticking my journalistic career on this.
Just
they will make the top 4.
for the want of time, we do need to brush through the Champions League and the rest of Europe. I mean, it's no doubt that Barca are the red hot side in Champions League right now, along as Liverpool. Liverpool winning their match to maintain their perfect record in the Champions League. Sporting CP are second because of their beautiful win over Manchester City, the 4-1 over them. I mean, we do have some other impressive teams that had some great wins. Arsenal unfortunately lost to Inter in the Champions League. We did have teams like Aston Villa losing and ending their perfect streak to the Champions League. But I do want to ask, come the mid-section of the Champions League, when it comes to the knockout phase, which are your teams to highlight for you in the Champions League? Do you lean towards the Liverpool, the Madrid, Bayern, given the form this season in the Champions League?
Funny thing about this Champions League this year, they are not there yet. Some of these big teams are suffering a lot right now, but time will tell.
Really, I love this format. I love this format, this Champions League format, because it's you have an opportunity to go and make a statement, knowing that you're not going to get a reprisal attack.
Yeah.
So go there, get the job done, defeat the team, know that you're not going to face that team again, at least in that league stage. But really, I think that Real Madrid are Real Madrid. They will get there. Arsenal also are a very solid team. They will get there. Bayern Munich have already, they've gotten enough the results that they need. They lost to Barca, I understand that, but still, it's still too early to talk about where the teams will land.
I'm sorry to say, but if I'm because I don't think it's too early. Because they have gone halfway through
The league
phase already. So 4 more games, and now I don't see the table ending like this.
It won't end.
Oh, yeah, it won't end. But I don't see automatic qualification is not something I see happening for all these teams. I don't think Real Madrid are going to make it to the top 8. I don't think a team like PSG, I don't see them making it to the top 8. Atletico, I don't see them making it to the top 8. I see a lot of these teams are going to play playoffs. That's what I just see happening. You may not see it happening, but we're going to see it.
Just for the want of time, let's quickly brief over Europa League and the Conference League. I mean, the Europa League, Man U getting a solid win over Prague. The 2 new goals, I mean, it was the Ahmad show, him getting the 2 crucial goals for the win there. Tottenham with their disappointing loss to Galatasaray. You could also see the Osimhen show there with the brace over there. But I do want to ask, this is the league phase also in the Europa League. Man U not really where they need to be. Tottenham shaky as it starts, but they are in the top 8 right now. Do you see Man U breaking into that top 8, just briefly?
Man U, I think what's giving Man U the leverage here is the fact that they are unbeaten. Yes, the first 3 games are draws. Very disappointing draws, uninspiring draws, you could put it that way. But the new manager bounce, yes, he's an interim manager, that's Rude Boy himself, that's Rude Van Nistelrooy. He's an interim manager, but he's done a very, very good job. Getting that one against PAOK rather, it was a very, very big one there. At least he's given a sort of platform for Ruben Amorim to come in there and continue from where he stopped. So I think they will end up
briefly now to the Conference League, and it's looking all cold and blue on the top. I mean, the Pride of London do sit on top of the Conference League with their 8th new win over Noah. I know it's most people will say they were small boys on the night. I mean, but Chelsea do sit on top of the Conference League, expected to be one of the teams coming at the finals of the competition. That's what the general public expect. We still do have teams like Liga Warsaw giving a shout out there. We do have some other teams there, SK Rapid in the Fiorentina. Have had a shaky start to this Conference League. I mean, these are people who have made it to back-to-back Conference League finals. Most people will be expecting them to make it to another final again alongside with Chelsea. But I want to ask, do you see anybody topping Chelsea right now in the Conference League?
On the table, no, I think Chelsea is going to top the table. But whether I think Chelsea are going to win the Conference League is a big no. In football, time and time again, we see things like this. Everybody expects Chelsea to win. They're going to win. The Conference League is easy. They're playing teams like Wi-Fi passwords. It's going to be, But when the going gets tough, when we get to the knockout stages and they may face a team like Real Betis, the season is a marathon. They may not be informed.
Just to get there to that Real Betis, Real Betis have had a shaky start. I mean, they've been poor in the Conference League and somewhat in the La Liga as well.
Yes, they have. But, Real Betis, let's not forget that Andalusian side are a side that they've been living in the shadows of their Andalusian neighbors, that's Sevilla. And we know about that. But you write them off at your own peril. They have a very, very solid team. They have a solid manager. And when you check it there, they still are within a shout of qualifying to the next stage. They are not in the top 8 in the Conference League. But they are there within the next phase there where they could actually play. They have four games to break into the top 8. Or they could end there and still qualify. They are a side that could give Chelsea a run for the money. But I feel Chelsea are just too strong. Too strong. Chelsea might just go ahead and win this because when you check the pedigree of Chelsea, there is no team in that Conference League right now that has the kind of pedigree that Chelsea has. Two-time Champions League winners, two-time Europa League winners, and then the fact that it's not their preferred competition, but the fact that they are on the verge of making history, they could make history like Mourinho.
Being the first team to win all three European sets.
So really,
just briefly before we wrap up the show, I did want to talk about the appointment of Ruben Almiron. I mean, building up from his win from City, he has said his farewells to Sporting CP in their last away game, and against Braga. But I now want to ask, you are a Manchester United affiliate. Do you see Almiron getting your side, just briefly in 1 minute, do you see your side turning their trajectory this season?
You mean Sir Alex Almiron?
Please, quickly. We have a
the
minute
goat
to
is
wrap
here,
up.
so that's all I have to say. That's all I have to say.
Okay,
Just under 30 seconds.
The last time a Portuguese manager came with high recommendation from the Portuguese league, who was under 40, it didn't go well for an English side, and that was Chelsea. That was Andre Villas-Boas. Now, I'm not saying that will be the case with Amorim, but Amorim, I feel he'll do well with Man U, but Man U have a lot of work to do.
It was a pleasure having you on the show, KP, and Mr. Cecil, it's been a pleasure having you.
Likewise.
I still do remain your priest of football, Emeka America, aka Femelo, and stay tuned for more exciting episodes of the Afia Sports Show every Saturday. Hopefully, we do get the win for the Super Eagles come this week. I mean, that's what we hope.
Sure.
And that's where we say a goodbye on the show today. Farewell.